When Ed was sitting in front of him, Principal Obel said that he had read all the investigation reports. He felt like he had been through a lot of hard things. Principal Obel sighed for a moment. While pouring his tea, he said that he did not expect him to have this kind of accident. On behalf of the academy, he sincerely apologized to him for their lack of security management. Hearing that, Ed said that it was unnecessary. He did not blame him. The opponent was thorough and prepared, so he doubted that this problem could be solved even if the academy had prepared precautions in advance. Hearing that, Principal Obel said that he appreciated his words, but, after drinking his tea in one gulp, he said that he was curious. What was the real truth behind it? Everything seemed to have been arranged in such a way. Ed was just silent while drinking his tea. Principal Obel continued, judging from the timeline. You seem to be waiting for Caden and Knox to escape first, and once the mastermind who wanted to make you die received news, then you felt safe to appear in public. Principal Obel paused for a moment. He then took out several files. He didn't really know about how the intel conflicts in a noble family like the Roth-Taylor family worked, nor did he have any intention of digging deep into it. However, he was the one who managed this academy. Any incident that happened within the academy had to be reported to the imperial court. If he reported that he was still alive, then the Roth-Taylor family, one of the key factions in the empire, would definitely know of his existence, and likely, not in a way that he wanted. Ed also seemed to realize that and was a bit dizzy on how to solve it. He then asked if the reporting could be postponed for a while. Principal Obel did not immediately refuse and asked him, "Is there any reason to take that risk?" Ed explained, "As you may have guessed, the person who ordered that I be killed is none other than my own father, Crefin Roth-Taylor, the patriarch of the Roth-Taylor family as well as the real power holder in the imperial court." But, Principal Obel calmly said that the affairs outside the academy have nothing to do with him. His words really silenced Ed, but Ed did not give up so easily. He tried to convince him again. Even the Roth-Taylor family, a key force in the imperial court, would prefer for things to pass quietly without any news. If it becomes a problem later, you can report it then. What risk is there? Hearing that, Principal Obel then called his name. While flipping through the file in his hand, he said that he had heard about his academic performance that was improving rapidly, besides that his good reputation among students had also undergone an almost unbelievable turnaround. His sister, Tanya, also had a promising future. He also seemed to be highly valued by the top-ranked students, as if he had turned into a completely different person. Ed's body seemed to freeze after hearing his words. He was really surprised to hear that, but, after reading the files in his hand, Principal Obel said that he had previously said that Sylvania Academy always stand on the side of its students, especially talented students like him. He didn't think he needed to explain it further. With a friendly smile, Principal Obel then extended his hand and said goodbye. He said that he would remember his name well. The whole conversation with Principal Obel made Ed realize that he seemed to have understood the whole situation. Even so, he still chose to close his eyes. It made Ed finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief, because thanks to that the fact that he was still alive would not leak out. After a while passed, after Ed finished his business with Principal Obel, in front of the royal family dormitory, when a male student came there with a gift, Kylie, who was guarding there, then stopped him. She said to the male student that today it was time for Tanya to rest, so she asked him not to bother her. She also did not accept inappropriate gifts. She asked him if he understood. The male student was then disappointed to hear that, and he then could only walk away from there with a feeling of disappointment. Seeing that, Ed wondered if it was okay for people like her to do things like that, when she was a saintess, but his attention was then immediately distracted when someone walked up to him. It was Tanya. She said that she was initially surprised when she heard he was called by the principal. Seeing her, Ed asked, "From what I heard, this year's student council president election, they said that you are certain to win." He then congratulated his sister. It seemed that her time to shine had come, although the excitement could not be hidden on Tanya's face, but she still said that she still could not let her guard down. After Ed's appearance on stage, Tanya had already been proven innocent. Out of the 12 top-ranked students from each faculty, 8 had expressed their support for her. In addition to the fact that most of the top-ranked students were on her side, the real reason why Tanya was able to secure this lead was because of the fall of Lortell. Lortell incessantly portrayed the student council president election as a one-on-one battle between her and Tanya. As a result, everyone forgot about the minor candidates. This rivalry then became a face-to-face contest between Lortell and Tanya, and just as their approval ratings reached a critical balance, suddenly, shocking news came. There were reports of Lortell embezzling funds from the Merchant Association and exploiting her business partner. Out of shame, she was eventually forced to resign, with Lortell having been eliminated from the competition. Now only Tanya's supporters remained. As Ed was recollecting what had happened in the past few days, Tanya sat down beside him and said, "Lately, when I kept taking care of the election, and you were busy with the investigation, the two of us rarely got a chance to talk. In the future I'm sure we will have many opportunities, but first I want to say something." Hearing that, Ed seemed to be able to foresee what she wanted to say. He said that he had said "you're welcome" repeatedly. Tanya seemed to be very grateful to him for what he had done at that time, but Tanya immediately said that that was not what she wanted to say. While feeling a little embarrassed, Tanya then called him. She said that this question might sound a little cruel, and honestly she was also confused about whether to ask this, but she couldn't hold it, so she asked if she could ask him something. At that time, during the speech session, why were you willing to support me to that extent, even to the point of being willing to announce to the public that you would take my side? If you really intend to stay hidden, you shouldn't have to risk yourself to come out of hiding. Somehow, it feels as if you can't bear to see me suffer from injustice. That's what I feel. Hearing that, Ed looked a little hesitant in answering his question. He then answered yes. It was like that. His answer seemed to get a big reaction from Tanya. She seemed to be very happy about it. While smiling at him, Ed said that they were family, so, of course he would take her side. Tanya smiled happily. Her face looked very relieved when she heard that. Tanya then said since she was now the student council president, that meant she had to act as a student council president should, but maybe, she would be a bit biased. After all, she was also a human being. Tanya then stood up from her chair. She said if he had any problems, she asked him to just tell her. She would help him as much as she could. After saying that, Tanya then walked away from there. Ed smiled as he watched her leave, but his attention was then immediately distracted when he heard someone repeating his words earlier. It was Lortell. Lortell said that she was a bit jealous when she heard the word family. Seeing her, Ed then asked her since when she was standing there. With a small smile, Lortell replied, since Senior said embarrassing things to Tanya. Putting that aside, Ed said that lately the news about her was hot. He worriedly asked if she was okay. Lortell was silent for a moment hearing that. With a brilliant smile, she said of course it was fine, everything went according to plan. The scandal that secured Tanya's victory, the case of her embezzling Merchant Association funds and the news of her mistreatment of her business partner. In fact, it was news that Lortell had deliberately leaked. Lortell had from the beginning arranged a one-on-one competition with Tanya to erase the presence of other candidates. When Lortell sought out Princess Phinia to openly show her hostility to Tanya, all that was her plan to pressure Tanya to participate in the student council president election. Tanya and Princess Phinia were both burdened by her death, and once he appeared, obviously they will support him to atone for their sins. As for himself, at that time, when Lortell came to meet him in his hiding place, and asked him to hug her, Lortell already had a feeling that she would make a lot of enemies soon, even if it meant turning the whole academy against her. At least, she wanted him to stay by her side. Ed had already made the decision to save Tanya when he found out about Lortell's plan. His duel with Zix helped him remove the remaining doubts that were in him. When he told Tanya that saving her was because they were family, he wasn't lying, but it would be a lie if he didn't consider Tanya's usefulness in the future. Act 4 was a fight against the Roth-Taylor family, and he was already their enemy, and as a family insider, Tanya would be the perfect connection for gathering intelligence and misdirection strategies. But Ed wouldn't talk about his plan to just anyone. Only people who really understood dark affairs needed to know about it. For example, like a girl who has spent her whole life calculating profit and loss. While Ed was thinking about her, Lortell said that her bad image in the academy had been increasing recently. Tanya also didn't seem to look at her well, so for now, she would leave everything to him. Hearing that, Ed then said to her that she had some kind of bad habit, the habit of manipulating people around her like a chessboard. Lortell just laughed at that. She said that she was also helpless about that. That was the risk of the job. Sometimes even she herself was played. Ed was silent for a moment hearing that. He then once again asked her if she was really okay. Lortell suddenly stopped walking when she heard that. With a small smile, Lortell suddenly hugged his hand. She said that the rumors could not take away her money, so there was no point in thinking about it. She was also aware that she was naturally suited to be a villain. As long as she did not turn him into her enemy, Lortell smiled sweetly at him when she said that. That fact also seemed to make Lortell willing to play this role even though it made her hated by the majority of people in the academy. Human relationships always have hidden layers, that's why understanding someone's true intentions is difficult. With Princess Phinia rejecting the role of student council president, her next step is uncertain. And the power struggle between the Imperial faction and the Roth Taylor family, no one knows what it will become. As for the development of the remaining acts, it has become something that Ed himself does not know for sure what it will become. After parting with Lortell, Ed then entered the northern forest and headed somewhere. After a long journey, he then finally arrived at the place he was aiming for. It was the cabin he had painstakingly built and occupied. It had been a month since he left the cabin. He felt strange when he returned here after so long. He even felt a little touched, but Ed realized that there were several things he had to do immediately. In order to keep the cabin tidy, he had to clean up the campfire area again. Then, in this cabin that was left in a mess, when Ed went inside and checked the cabin, he was then surprised when he heard someone snoring. He also saw a witch hat lying next to the person. That person was of course Lucy. She slept so soundly on the bed while hugging a pillow. Lucy seemed to sleep so soundly that his presence was not enough to wake her up. Ed couldn't help but laugh at that. He seemed to be quite nostalgic about it. Ed decided not to wake her up. He then took a book on the shelf in the cabin. The books were left long enough to make dust accumulate on them. While sitting on the chair next to the bed, Ed then continued to read the book. But not long after he read the book, he suddenly thought, for now, he should rest first. He was quite relieved by the fact that he finally returned to the cabin. And Ed then closed his eyes and fell asleep with Lucy. When the sun appeared in the sky and chased away the darkness brought by the night, the news of Tanya's election as student council president reached him 3 days later. In the professor's building, in the office of one of the professors, Janica was invited to come there. The professor seemed to ask her to supervise some kind of assessment which made Janica hesitate. The professor was the senior professor of spirit studies, Melina. Seeing her hesitation, Professor Melina then reassured her and said that she would give her extra points later. Of course she was aware that her academic field was still difficult when compared to professors, but at her current age she could already handle high-ranking spirits freely. When it came to raw instinct, among the spirit sorcerers who are still active, she is still at the top. Even so, Janica was still confused why it had to be her. Professor Melina explained. There would be a joint combat training session soon, so she had to uphold her dignity as a senior, but Janica said that she didn't want to uphold her dignity or anything. Hearing that, Professor Melina said that she didn't expect her to be a strict model student, but after all she was still the top-ranked student in her year, as well as the best spirit sorcerer in this academy. In every class, she realized that she kept smiling like the happiest person in the world. It was obvious that she was in love. She knew that she was dating Ed, but it's obvious she's completely head over heels. From the way she acted, she seemed to be out of her mind. Her words shocked Janica and made her face red. Janica's heart was pounding because her secret was exposed so bluntly. Professor Melina was then shocked when Janica suddenly kicked her desk hard. With a blushing face, Janica then asked her about what she said earlier about her and Ed, and why she suddenly said that. Seeing her reaction, Professor Melina asked her if she was joking. She explained, just before this you were always with him, not only during spirit lessons, but also general lessons and elemental lessons. You go to the cafeteria and academy facilities always together with him. Lately, whatever you do, at every opportunity you have, you always put on a stupid smile. Professor Melina couldn't help but sigh when she said that. She was confused about what silly thoughts actually made her absent-minded like that. During class, you always stare blankly at the blackboard and start smiling to yourself. You two are like lovesick kids who are dating for the first time. Seeing you two is tiring, you know. Hearing that, Janica stammeringly asked her to please don't say that to anyone else. Professor Melina yawned for a moment at her attitude. She said that she usually didn't care about who was dating who among the students, but she then told Janica the fact that she had not been aware of, that everyone already assumed they had such a relationship. Hearing that, Janica then finally realized the strange looks that the students gave her. Professor Melina said that people thought that she and Ed had been in a relationship. The news was certainly very surprising to Janica's innocent heart.